Of all the Auburn Tigers, who's currently winning spring practice?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yasin.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me, Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio vet and regular here on the show. Darrell, we're going to share our list. We each made a top 5 winners so far throughout Auburn spring practice. I'll go first with my top guy. I think Jayin Lee is winning Auburn spring practice so far. Everything we hear about this kid has been nothing short of exceptional and amazing. So much so where you're talking about Nehemiah Pritchett, a guy who's been an SEC starter for a hot minute, losing his job probably by the time the season starts because Jayin Lee is too good to not have him on the field in a starting role. In a position group that we already kind of thought was loaded, the defensive back room, Jayin Lee has come in and asserted himself and has been an instant impact guy with a chance to have, an All-American type ceiling early in his career. Jayin Lee, I think, is the winner in this so far.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I like Jayin Lee. We'll talk about that later on, why I like him so much. But, everything I've heard in scrimmages and in practices is that he is that prototypical lockdown corner. And I think it's very difficult and cannot be stated enough how hard it is for a true freshman to come in and star at cornerback in the SEC. I'm not talking about just be serviceable. I'm hearing things like right now, if he gets in the rotation and plays significant snaps, you got to think that this is a kid that could potentially play on Sunday. The Jamal Deans and the Carlton Davises and those type of guys that are in the league right now. I really like him. I think it's a phenomenal addition to this Auburn secondary. And there you go. That's right. Roger McCreary, baby. And again, but think about that. Those guys I just mentioned, all 3 of those guys did not make an impact and start or play significant snaps for Auburn as true freshmen.
Other than Carlton.
Yeah. Pardon me?
Other than Davis, Carlton Davis.
But you're talking about like starting?
He started for Muschamp, didn't he? His first year?
Okay. He might have. I just don't remember. I thought he kind of spot started, but you're right. He may have. And that goes to show you how unique and special that is. So
he's very good. Yeah.
And so that, to be able to do that and step in that role is really significant, I think.
I'm with you. And just the way that it's been without a doubt, talking with different sources, whether it's support staff, whether it's players, whether it's folks watching the scrimmage, everybody's like, yeah, Jayin Lee's better than everybody else out there. He and DJ are going to be a major problem. So he's my winner so far because I thought he was going to be a rotational piece honestly, I kind of thought nickel, maybe he's after Keontae Scott or something like that. But no, he seems like he's got a really solid chance to be the starter opposite DJ James, which is a great situation to be in. Darrell, who is your number 1 winner so far throughout Auburn's spring practices?
It's a Johnny-come-lately winner, and it's a guy that really made up for it at the post in the backstretch and has overtaken it, but it's Holden Geriner.
Okay.
And my justification on that is when you come as far as allegedly he's come from being mentioned as a third-string guy 2 weeks ago when spring practice started to the leap he made at Pro Day to Hugh Freeze singling him out, it may all be logistics, it all be semantics or wordplay, but I think to get that much to make up that much ground, in that short of a time, and at a premier position like quarterback, so far has to be in my mind the winner.
I like that. I figured you were going to put him somewhere on this list. I have no quarterbacks on my list just because I have a hard time. This is semantics, right? And this is how we each viewed lists. And this is why I kind of like making it a little arbitrary so we can have different perspectives here. But I don't have any quarterbacks on my list because I don't think Auburn's starting quarterback is here. I mean, but Holden, your case about Holden getting better, I mean, you can't deny that. I mean, I came on here a few weeks ago, Darrell, and like that was the worst throwing session among quarterbacks that I've ever seen. And he was a part of that. I mean, 2 feet short of like these targets consistently. Then he goes out there and outthrows Cam at Pro Day, according to several scouts, and then starting to earning the love of Coach Freeze. And I'm having people text me about how like Pro Day was a turning point for him, and he's been exceptional in practice ever since. So I'm with you. It's a good pick. I just didn't put a quarterback on here. And
I 100% agree because, you can look at this from a bird's eye view and say, okay, what if the quarterback isn't on campus, comes in and wins the starting job? Does Holden Geriner become a loser? Well, that's where I'm not getting trapped or locked into it being somebody that necessarily is going to start. It's where he's come from. Even if the kid's a backup, if he's the number 2 quarterback and has gone over the top of or, basically past Finley and Ashford, then to me, he's winning. That's why I look at that.
I get it. No arguments for me there. Who's your number 2, Darrell? Who's your second winner of Auburn spring practice so far?
If anybody listened to me last year on our reaction shows, this is no surprise. My man, downtown Cam Brown. Okay. I've been hearing he is a receiver that has separated himself. He's the one, like you and Charlie Five talked about, that everyone seems to mention when they talk about receivers groups. There's a couple different ways to look at that, but I've heard he's a man amongst boys and he's really separating himself. You want a wide receiver 1, and I think that he is establishing that, and so I consider him to be, if he becomes the focal point of any quarterback, whoever it is throwing him the ball, then I got to imagine that he's winning spring.
Okay, I get that. And I mean, the more reports that come out about the receivers, the more I think cautious we are. But he certainly passes the eye test more than everybody else does. I don't have a receiver on my list. If I did, I probably would have put Cam Brown. I think Nick Marner you could certainly make an argument for, just because it seems like he's won that other job. Like Cam Brown already had that job, it seems like. Nick Marner won the other one. But I'm with you. As far as number 1 SEC caliber options, it seems like it's Cam Brown. There's a kind of a drop off before everybody else. So I'm with you.
And that's the point, is if the whole wide receiver group is struggling, but he's playing really, really well, then he still has an opportunity to be separating himself. And again, when you talk about what's come out about the wide receiver group, I kind of hold that with a grain of salt because, when I want to go to my wide receiver scouts, I go to Todd McShay, I go to, Mel Kiper and Heather Dinich. Okay, whatever. I mean,
I was wondering what you were doing there.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be, but I mean, I take that with a huge, huge grain of salt. How somebody in a short window in that time could make that assumption or that calculation on that. I think you need to watch a receiver group a lot more than 20 minutes to kind of come to that conclusion.
Well, and that's similar to the pushback, a few weeks ago when I talked about that was the worst throwing session I've seen. A lot of people said it was 20 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. And I had that caveat when I talked about it. My second winner is Jarquez Hunter, Darrell, of course, Auburn's running back. But he's a winner of spring, but I don't think it really has anything to do with him. I think the front 5 on the offensive line has been so impressive. I thought about doing a bit and just doing the 5 offensive linemen, 5 starting offensive linemen for the 5 winners. And I do have an offensive lineman on here, but Jarquez Hunter to me is a winner because it sounds like he is finding ways to score regardless of how much better the defense looks early versus the offense. He had that 50-yard touchdown run in the scrimmage this past week. And then also just the fact that like the guys in front of him are going to give him more of a chance than last year's guys did, giving him a chance and Tank Bigsby a chance a year ago.
That's a good analogy. I like the way you set that up, that it's not as much as what maybe Hunter is doing, because we kind of expect that from him. He's already a winner, right? But it's because he's only going to get better and only get more accolades or win more because of who now is going to be blocking for him. So that's a good angle to take. I didn't think of it that way. That's interesting. But yeah, it's like a quarterback that's got a big, hulking left tackle that can protect him. He's winning. He's getting a big added benefit. So that's good for Hunter. I agree with that.
Yep. All right, we will discuss. We'll discuss the other winners in a second. And you actually accidentally teased my next one, Darrell. I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. Right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Darrell, it's the Final Four going into this weekend. Do you like UConn significantly more than the field right now? UConn's got the best odds. They're a 5.5-point favorite over Miami, according to FanDuel. You taking that?
Yeah, I love UConn. Mentioned it last week when they slid into that third spot. I like Miami too, but Miami defaults to 3 because they're going to play UConn. It makes sense, right?
Right.
So yeah, UConn seems to have come back around. They were one of the more dominant basketball teams at the beginning of the year, and they have come right back full circle. Love UConn.
Yep. And then just for kicks and giggles, San Diego State, a 1.5-point favorite over Florida Atlantic. I think I would take San Diego State here, Darrell, but I mean, I think that one's going to has a chance to be like a crazier finish, I think, than UConn and Miami. So
you look at things like age and veteran leadership on a ball club, and they got 2 fifth-year seniors and 1 6-year senior that took his COVID year. That kind of experience is very tough to find in the NCAA tournament.
And FanDuel's got so many things going on here. They actually have hypotheticals too. Hypothetically, if UConn were to play Florida Atlantic, they'd be a 6.5-point favorite. And if UConn were to play San Diego State, they'd be at a 4.5-point favorite. So take that for what it's worth. Just go over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. They've got all kinds of props, odds, and lines. Check out. They've also got no sweat first bet for new customers. Once again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Darrell, my number 3 winner so far in Auburn spring practice. You mentioned the left tackle. I'm going with Dillon Wade. I went back and forth on if I wanted to put Dillon Wade or Gunnar Britton. Both those guys came in with the expectations of being left tackle. In fact, they sold to both of them, both players, that they were going to be the left tackle in Hugh Freeze's offense. And obviously there's only one left tackle, and it doesn't really seem like there was much competition. They just made the decision. Dillon Wade, you're the left tackle. Gunnar Britton, you're the right tackle. Everybody was cool with that. But I've talked a bunch about Avery Jones. I've talked a lot about Gunnar Britton. But Dillon Wade, I mean, left tackles in Hugh Freeze's system, they're usually pretty successful, Darrell. I mean, Laramie Tunsil earlier this offseason signed like the richest contract for like an offensive lineman ever. And that's a Hugh Freeze product of what he did at Ole Miss. So I think Dillon Wade has a chance because he is Hugh Freeze's left tackle. He has a chance to be a very rich man down the road.
Well, it speaks volumes that he gets slid into the left tackle spot. It's a premier position along the offensive line. It's a spotlight position. I, like you, am surprised that it's not flip-flop with Gunnar Britton, but that's okay. It's good that there's just some interchangeability there.
And I'm surprised they never even really looked at it. It's just like they rolled it out and like, this is what we're doing, and which is fine. I mean, it looks good. Like it passes the eye test, so I'm totally fine with it.
When you win that position in the spring, like it looks like he has, absolutely winning. It's a good call.
Yep. All right, who's your number 3 here?
Connor Lew.
Oh man, that's such a good one. I didn't put him on my list. That is a great one, Darrell.
When coaching staffs mention by name a kid and they go, good God, we hit on this one.
We nailed it.
You know, we nailed it. Stick your chest out. We nailed it, you know, and this kid's going to play. They say he's going to play. When I talked about a freshman defensive back, how hard it is to play in the SEC as a freshman, it's so hard to play on the offensive line as a freshman. And when you've got people projecting that aren't scribes and writers and guys like us that love him, but dudes that are on the staff, I mean, it puts so much pressure on a freshman when your position coach says, we got us a dog. We hit this one. This kid, we're excited. And you're beaming. That's a lot to live up to. So he's definitely in that category of really, really winning and coming on. And we'll get in the rotation. Look, the offensive line, you know that you don't stay with the same 5 throughout the whole year because of injuries and depth and that kind of thing. So to be able to see him get significant snaps as a freshman along the offensive line is huge.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that there's a clear predecessor after Avery Jones. After this season, there will be no discussion on who's Auburn's center after Avery Jones goes on to the NFL, which is a great situation to be in. And you get 2 years at least as a starter, which is huge. So I'm mad at myself that he is not on my list so far. But yeah, I mean, I just remember talking to I reached out to some of my contacts like in Miami that covered him because he was committed to Miami. When there was a lot of smoke, they're like, oh, maybe he's going to flip. Maybe he's going to flip. And everybody down there just like couldn't believe that like he was a 3-star. They're like, this is like the most underrated dude like in the class. Like they really felt that way. And they kind of saw it coming for a while that he was going to flip. So, I mean, it wasn't devastating when they left, but everybody I talked to close to Miami, and Alex Dono is one of those hosts, Locked On Canes. That is a huge show. And he was talking about like, man, yeah, he's a freak. Like he's really, really good. So he's going to have a good future. We got a good one. And boy, was he right.
I always love to look at, besides rankings, what schools want you and what coaches want you. Mario Cristobal wanting you badly and being thirsty for you and being very, very disappointed that he got flipped tells me everything I need to know of what kind of prospect Connor Lew is.
That's right.
I trust that dude with offensive line play.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, who's your number 4?
Jayin Lee or Jayin Lee. I've seen it pronounced right. I'll go with Jayin Lee for all the reasons you mentioned before and all the reasons I mentioned. I hate to have a repeat, but I've heard nothing but good things about him.
I get it.
A lockdown scenario. So, yes, for all the reasons listed at the beginning of the show where you had him number 1, I have him as number 4 and could have had him higher. It's just hard to leapfrog.
It is hard. It is hard. But that was going to be my question. So, obviously, I think he's number 1. I think he's the winner of spring. You've got him as 4 right now. Why do you have him behind Holden, Cam Brown, and Connor Lew? I think that's the way we don't repeat ourselves.
Excellent. First of all, behind Holden, because Holden was kind of left for dead 2 weeks ago. He's been resurrected, and to come as far as he's come, hard. I mean, very hard.
That's great.
Cam Brown is becoming the best alternative at his position group. When you rise to the top and you are the best among your position group, then I think, that's why he's a little bit higher. Number 3 with Connor Lew, he's a freshman who's going to have an opportunity to play on the offensive line in the SEC and will probably lock down a position of need where we had a rotating door of 4 dudes last year for the next 2 or 3 years. So that's significant. And Lee has DJ James on the other side as a little bit of a shield, a little bit of as a shelter. So there's going to be a little bit of a shadow there, I feel like. It's going to be hard for him to come out of that shadow a little bit because of how good DJ James is. So that's probably why I have him 4.
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. My number 4 is Jayson Jones. What all did we hear when these big defensive linemen were entering the transfer portal and choosing Auburn, right? Lawrence Johnson, Messiah Nasili-Kite, and then Justin Rogers, former 5-star. And everybody put out their pre-spring depth chart, and all of them had Rogers starting and Jayson Jones as the backup. And what have we seen from Jayson Jones since then? We've seen him be more effective in the pass rush. We've seen him be dominant in stopping the run and scrimmage. And then when I asked Hugh Freeze last week, who were the leaders, the second name out of his mouth was Jayson Jones. And I just don't think he can answer that quickly and also think that his job is on the line. And in fact, he's done so well that in several situations, they've moved him from nose to defensive tackle because they want him and Rogers on the field at the same time. Then Marcus Harris has the flexibility to put him out at edge. So I think Jayson Jones has proved that he can be a starter in 2 different positions on this defensive front, at nose and at defensive tackle. When everybody kind of had him as losing his starting spot because some of the newcomers. So Jayson makes this list for me.
I really don't want to comment on your number 4 without ruining my number 5. How about them apples, brother?
Okay.
We got 2 others. Spoiler alert, I am going to plead the 5th until later, please, sir.
Okay. Well, hey, hang tight. We'll get to Darrell's number 5 to continue this conversation in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. I want to encourage everybody to check out the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. Darrell, your number 5 in response to me putting Jayson Jones at number 4.
Is the anticipation and the drum roll killing you, right? It's killing
it is.
you.
I'm like, well, let's just get to it.
Jayson Jones is my number 5. And for a lot of the same reasons you had. It's funny. I've told you before, get out of my brain. People are going to think, oh, they collaborated. They talked about this. Nope, we didn't do it by design. We did not. We stayed away. We didn't even hint at each other's. But Jayson Jones has been a guy for all the things you listed on the field. Getting some sacks, not being moved out of his starting position, even with guys being brought along the defensive line. I have heard, as you have, off the field, locker room, weight room, leadership, wanting to be so on board with this defensive line being nasty that he's willing to take the lead in workouts and spring workouts and winter workouts and all that kind of stuff. To me,
and Darrell, when other upperclassmen are slacking in the weight room, he's the first one either encouraging. He's gauging the situation, but it sounds like he's either getting in their face or encouraging them, depending on the type of leadership that they need. So Jayson Jones is it. Jayson Jones is it.
Yeah, and I think the success of the offensive line is going to be funneled through and run through Jayson Jones. If Imba and Harris have big years and Justin Rogers comes in and has to spell Jayson Jones and he has a big year, it's all going to be because of this thing being run through. And don't underestimate inexperienced linebacker play being affected by what Jayson Jones can do up front as well.
Yeah.
It helps them.
Oh, I'm all for it. All right. My number 5, I've actually got 2 people. I'm cheating. And you've got honorable mentions too.
Yeah.
So so you can, I'll say one is 5 and one is an honorable mention.
Okay.
Robert Woodyard is who I have written down as 5th, the young linebacker, because one, I guess 2 guys he was competing with have transferred. I think that's encouraging. And we're just seeing a ton of them. My other guy is Wesley Steiner, because myself included in this, like everybody wrote Wesley Steiner off. And like, there's a lot of people that are saying like, it could be Woodyard and Steiner that are the starters at linebacker. So I've got both of those guys just because everybody was so focused on Keys and Tolan coming in through the transfer portal. And those 2 guys may win it, right? We'll see. But Freeze talking about how like the linebacker group is the group that's improved the most. I think he said that last week. And the fact that Woodyard's out there consistently with the first group whenever we're able to see, I think that's telling. So I'm going 5 Woodyard, and then my honorable mention, I'm going Wesley Steiner.
That's good. I think the reason why I purposely left linebackers off is because either I'm missing something, but I'm just not hearing a lot of the chatter and the scuttlebutt about linebackers. You've been at some of the media windows. I have not. So you're able to see some things maybe with Woodyard that I have not. I want to see some linebackers emerge and start to get some run and their names mentioned a lot more. Yeah. And then, that's something that I could look at. I don't know. I don't want to be so down on this group. I want to have something to be excited about. So that's why I've just not really even thought about having a linebacker on the list.
I get it. All right. Hit me with your honorable mentions.
Our man, Rivaldo Fairweather.
Okay.
I've just heard from a freakish standpoint, in the seam and some of the things that he can do going to get the football. More exposure. That's why he's an honorable mention. I think he's going to be a guy that we look at in the red zone and just go, this is special. This is what Auburn has been looking for. And so that's why I think he's emerging probably. I mean, I think when we get into September and we are inside the 10-yard line, I think you're going to see a pretty big, tall, lanky receiving / tight end core. And I think he could be one of those guys that cause major problems.
Okay. Who's your next honorable mention?
Justin Rogers. Because of what I was hearing along the defensive line and sacks and that type of thing. And a lot of I'm starting to hear some things bubble up as far as is coming to the surface as far as he's concerned. So I had him as well.
Okay. And that last one.
Keldrick Falk. I mean, look, I think every depth chart we've seen has had him or Elijah McAllister penciled in as the edge. Again, to do that as a freshman and to come in and step right out.
Who was limited at the start of spring too.
Exactly. I think it's, I think you've got to have guys that have an immediate impact as a freshman when you go through a recruiting class and you sign kids and you're a coaching staff that's kind of behind the 8 ball coming in late. So position of impact, edge is one of those. And so to even get in the rotation and be the backup, to me, would be worth an honorable mention as far as winning for a true freshman.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I love that. All right, yeah, we were joking, hoping our lists weren't the same. They're very different. So let us know in the comments or in the Discord or on social media which list you like more. Mine 1 through 5 was Jayin Lee, Jarquez Hunter, Dylan Wade, Jayson Jones, and Robert Woodyard. Darrell's was Holden Geriner, Cam Brown, Connor Liu, Jayin Lee, and Jayson Jones. Darrell, how can people find you, hear you, support you, all that stuff?
Follow me at DAP6410. You can catch me on Monday mornings at 7:10. Auburn Opelika this morning with Ben Taylor. Later on that evening at 5 o'clock, you can catch me on WNSP, The Final Drive out of Mobile. And then on Wednesdays, while you're out, just filling in for you on the Max Roundtable.
Yes, you can find all my written work at auburndaily.com and bravestoday.com. Happy opening day to everyone who celebrates. Today should be a national holiday. We will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.